Right now, I want to welcome back to the program Legislative Affairs Director for the Virginia Shooting Sports Association. Dave Adams is with us on the program. Dave, how are you, good sir?
I'm great, Cam. Thanks for having me back.
It is good talking with you. And, you know, the last time we were talking about the Virginia legislature, it wasn't really good news, Dave. In fact, it was really bad news because Virginia had lost a lot of good pro-gun lawmakers. That was in 2017. We have off-year elections in the state. Last night, though, there was a special election in Virginia, and really this was going to determine who was going to control the House of Delegates, right?
That's correct. It was one of the bright spots of last night's election here in Virginia. The congressional races didn't turn out completely like we had hoped for, but this one was one we were definitely pulling for, and it turned out to be pretty good for gun owners.
All right, so this was Virginia House District 8, which is out in the sort of southwestern part, south central part of the state of Virginia, because Virginia's got that huge tail that goes out. So just to the west of Roanoke, Virginia, Salem, you got Christiansburg, which is down near where Virginia Tech is, up into rural Craig County. Joe McNamara was the Republican candidate with 90% of the precincts reported at 10:45 in the evening. McNamara had 63% of the vote. And as the Roanoke Times notes, the Democratic challenger there, Carter Turner, was unable to ride the blue wave to victory despite his strategy of focusing on issues rather than party affiliation. So Carter Turner knows this was a generally red district, wasn't trying to run as a big blue candidate, and it still didn't work. I'm curious, Dave, was the Second Amendment an issue for either one of those campaigns? And did the gun owner vote turn out in this election?
I think that the campaigns ran along the usual state lines. The Democrats are running on the health care issue, and I think that's pretty much what this particular General Assembly candidate was doing. We just expanded Medicaid here in Virginia to under Obamacare. We were one of the few states that had not done that. And I think that overall that the Second Amendment probably was part of the discussion, but I think that they ran more on the local issues that would be the Democrat would be pushing if he went into the General Assembly. Okay,
and again, if that Democrat had gone into the General Assembly, maybe we would have seen gun control become one of those issues. Now, what's interesting, Dave, is that as a result of last night's congressional elections in Virginia, Ben Cline, who's a delegate right now, he won the 6th congressional district in Virginia. So he's going to Congress, and that means we now are going to have another special election to determine control of the assembly.
Yes, that's correct, and hopefully they will schedule it where he or she can take their seat before the General Assembly starts. Sometimes it happens that the special elections are scheduled and they may be coming into the session 1 or 2 days after the beginning of the session.
Okay. Now, Ben Cline represents the 24th, not congressional district, but the 24th district in Virginia. Do you know right offhand much about that district and how it tends to vote, Dave?
Very, very red district, and Ben has been an excellent delegate and for his constituents out there. I would hope that we would be able to hold that district in a special election. Of course, you don't want to take anything for granted. It's going to be held during, we're talking a holiday season when these elections are going to be held. Mm-hmm. First, the nominating process, and then, of course, the actual special election to fill the seat. So you don't want to take anything for granted, but it is a very red area. And I would expect that if we do what we're supposed to do and get our people out to the polls, we can hold that seat and keep the majority in the House of Delegates.
Yeah, I'm looking at the sort of the district map right now. And this is also, it's a little bit north of that district that we were just talking about, which is around the Roanoke area. This is the I-81 corridor in Virginia, cuts right through the middle of this district, starts just south of Stanton, Virginia, and just to the west of Waynesboro, goes down to just north of Lynchburg, Virginia, and up into the Appalachians in the western part of the state near the West Virginia border. So as you say, that is a rural part of the state that is a more red part of the state. At the same time, we know what can happen in special elections, particularly when there's so much at stake here. Frankly, I wouldn't be surprised. Well, I take that back. I was going to say I wouldn't be surprised if Michael Bloomberg dropped some money in this race, but if he did so, Dave, I think he'd have to do so quietly, because this is one of those districts where you start mentioning Michael Bloomberg and you're going to get people riled up. Why do we need this out-of-state, anti-gun former mayor of New York City trying to tell us who to elect?
Right in the middle of hunting season, no less.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess the elections never end here, because we've got the 2019 election cycle getting ready to kick off here in Virginia as well.
That's true, and I cannot stress how important that's going to be this year. This isn't hyperbole. This isn't some fundraising appeal trying to scare people. But gun owners need to understand that if we don't hold the majority in both the House and the Senate after the 2019 election, we're going to look like New Jersey and California overnight, because the governor would sign every bill that came to his desk that looks like anything that they have already in New Jersey or California.
Absolutely. And, you look at the congressional races last night around Virginia, we saw 3 losses for Republicans and, generally speaking, pro-gun members of Congress. One up in Northern Virginia where Barbara Comstock lost, and then race down near Virginia, or near Richmond, Virginia, kind of stretching up north towards Fredericksburg. That's the 7th Congressional District. That's Dave Bratt's district. He lost to Abigail Spanberger. Down closer to the Norfolk area, up through the Eastern Shore, and even into Yorktown County or York County, you saw Scott Taylor lose and both of those last 2 races, by the way, Dave, those were incredibly close races. A couple thousand votes, making the difference in those races.
And in the Bratt race, it was Chesterfield County that put Spanberger over. There was a little situation where 2 precincts, they held the balloting open until 9 o'clock last night in Chesterfield County, because in those 2 precincts, because of the lines and some other issues. And so that was very late in the evening when those returns started being reported. And once they started coming in, that's what Bratt lost Chesterfield County by about 10,000 votes. And, that's Chesterfield used to be as red as it could be. And it's just a totally different demographic. And we've got to do a lot of work if we want to take that seat back, and if we want to keep those House of Delegates seats that are in Chesterfield County next year.
Yeah, and again, this is, I'm curious, maybe because last night, I think around the country and certainly in Virginia and in these districts, you saw, I think, about as a big a surge in Democratic turnout as you're going to see. I don't think, let's put it this way, I don't think the voter turnout is going to be what it was last night in Virginia come 2019. That's the good news, I think, that gun owners have. We're not going to be facing what amounts to an anti-Trump a surge in turnout. But having said that, we, as you noted, we've got to start now as gun owners in Virginia laying the groundwork and getting our ground game started so that we do turn out every gun owner to vote next year.
That's exactly right. It was interesting. You've mentioned this the last couple of days, talking about the ads that Spanberger ran. She didn't mention she was a Democrat in the ads. You never heard her talk about guns. I never even saw any outside money ads for her talking the gun issue.
Nope.
She's as anti-gun as the rest of them. If you go on her website, she's right there. She's talking, quote, universal background checks. She's talking, quote, assault weapons. And just like the candidate down in the Tidewater area that defeated Scott Taylor, and then, of course, nobody expected Jennifer Wexton, who's been a member of the House of Delegates, to be anything what she is, and that's totally anti-gun. We expected the Comstock race to be kind of hard to hold on to, but I don't think we expected the Bratt race to be the way it is, and Scott Taylor as well.
Absolutely. Talking with Dave Adams, Legislative Affairs Director for the Virginia Shooting Sports Association. And, it's interesting, going back to Abigail Spanberger there in the 7th District, who narrowly defeated Dave Bratt. I'm looking here at she was designated a, quote, gun sense candidate by Moms Demand Action back in March of this year. And you're right, Dave, that not only was the gun issue, I mean, like, she never brought up in her campaign ads that she was a gun sense candidate. She never mentioned the word gun. Not once in any of the ads that I saw.
That's exactly right. It was always, I've got your back, Bratsko on Washington. It was always, it was, I mean, if you're an ad person, it was very positive type of presentation she put forward in those ads. And, it was one of those things that sold in the suburbs. Every article I read about the campaign today said that it was the suburbs that put her over. And you're talking Henrico County and Chesterfield on that one.
Yep. And that's, and look, this was a national strategy for Bloomberg, both with his Independence USA Political Action Committee as well as Moms Demand Action. You had Moms Demand Action that were cutting ads for candidates that were not about the gun issue. We saw that in races around the country.
Yeah, absolutely. And they made a point of doing that. They didn't do it quietly. They made a point about that.
Yeah, and so, it's interesting. I mean, as a gun owner, first of all, I mean, I got a couple of thoughts. Like, really, if gun control is supposed to be such a winning issue, why aren't you talking about it? But secondly, as a gun owner, I do think we need to be talking about these issues. But I do think we need to be talking about these issues in a way that resonates, not just with rural voters, but frankly with suburban and urban voters as well, not just in Virginia, but across the country.
Oh, absolutely. It's interesting this morning, Bloomberg's The Trace was talking about how gun control was not a loser for the candidates that knocked off incumbents. But the fact is, at least the ads I saw, they didn't talk about the gun issue. So obviously in the back of their mind, they were a little bit concerned about if they pushed that too hard. I mean, look at Stacey Abrams down in Georgia. I have to hand it to Jake Tapper, just pounding her on the confiscating so-called assault weapons if they pass a law banning them. So,
right, which again was not a part of Stacey Abrams' campaign ads. I mean, she, that wasn't the part of the quote unquote gun sense talking points. In fact, even when candidates did talk about the quote-unquote common sense gun safety regulations, it was very rare for them. Beto O'Rourke in Texas, didn't shy away from talking about supporting a ban on semi-automatic rifles. Stacey Abrams did not shy away from that, although she was, again, didn't really want to get into the specifics about what would happen, how you would enforce that, what about the people who currently own those guns. But she acknowledged, yeah, I want to ban these guns. But most candidates around the country who, again, even earned those quote-unquote gun sense candidate designations, they weren't out there talking about gun bans. They were talking about things that tend to poll well. I don't think are particularly effective, more soundbite solutions, but they're talking about things like background checks, or even more vaguely and vacuously, not even talking about any specific policies, just talking about the need to do something, right?
Right.
All right. Dave Adams, again, Legislative Affairs Director for the Virginia Shooting and Sports Association. Again, I'm glad that we've got a little bit of good news, but the fight continues. When do you think we'll know a date for that next special election here in Virginia?
I would expect it to come out pretty soon, if not this week, by next week. They'll set the dates for the nominating process and then set it for the general election.
All right, and again, I said earlier, this is even going to have national implications because, as you noted, if we don't have that firewall in the legislature, our governor right now in Virginia, you're right, he would be happy to turn Virginia into New Jersey in terms of our gun laws, or New York or California. That's the model right now.
There's not one single piece of legislation passed in either of those states that he would not sign. And people need to understand that, and they need to get out there and get active now. Join VSSA, join NRA, and do everything they can to make sure that their gun rights are protected by those that they elect.
Yep. Yeah, because again, in Virginia, we're going up on, I think it's been 20 years now since we've had any significant gun control legislation passed. You've got a generation of people who have grown up in this state or have moved to this state and see this as a pro-gun and gun-friendly state, and maybe they take that for granted a little bit. We can't take this for granted. If we want Virginia to be a pro-gun, pro-Second Amendment state, we've got to fight to keep it that way.
You're exactly right.
All right, Dave Adams, thank you as always, sir. It's good talking with you today.
All right, Cam, thanks a lot.